Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira. Sitting across from me is John Teixeira once again. This week, we are going to be talking about the cost of setting up for Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
Love it. We're going to do a little series on short-term rentals, aren't we?
We are. We're going to do a little series and get everybody a little bit more detail on the whole Airbnb short-term rental thing, since we haven't really done a very huge deep dive, at least recently. So if anything we talk about today interests you, or you want to set up an Airbnb, or hear about our next part, or a little hint on the next part of the series, give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com. Now let's get into it. When we talk about the cost of setting up, we're talking about what people... that it's really one of those areas of, I want to start an Airbnb, but the setup cost is a very unknown part for most people, and I'd say a lot underestimate and overestimate.
Oh, yeah.
There's both sides.
Mostly
of the coin.
underestimate.
Mostly underestimate. Yes,
but we've already purchased the home.
But
That's
also
done.
come at it the whole way. No, I want to talk about the purchase too, because the cost of setting up involves upfront cash in a different way than a lot of other real estate investing, and you want to consider that. So,
because if you only have so much cash to purchase, you don't leave yourself enough liquid cash to do the setup.
Exactly. Yep. Liquidity is important, and we're going to get into why. It's not just liquidity is important on the front end of these things for them to be successful, because strapping yourself for cash makes you make decisions against your purpose of an Airbnb. So what I always tell people when we talk about Airbnbs is you can't go cheap. You need to, whatever your goal is and your target audience is for setup, it needs to be set up that way without making any sacrifices, because that's where you sacrifice revenue. So let's start from the beginning. We purchase, right? So this is simple. We've talked about purchasing a lot. You can either buy something cash or get a mortgage on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you need for a down payment?
Or you can use the BRRRR strategy that we've talked about. And if you don't know what we're talking about, then go back and look at our podcast on the BRRRR strategy.
Yes, how you get to acquiring it and making
what
it
ready
ready to be.
What does BRRRR stand for?
What?
What does BRRRR stand for?
Buy, rehab, refinance.
Nope, rent. Buy, rehab, rent.
There's a lot of R's in there. Rent, refinance, repeat.
Yeah, there you
go. But yeah, you could do that first. Whether you skip the rent part, go to refinance, and now we're ready to set it up.
Yep.
How you do your acquisition, we've gotten into a lot about, so we don't want to dive too much into that. But just we'll talk more about the cost. The liquidity is you're going to need 20%. For that purchase, right? You're going to need that down payment.
Yeah, depending on who you use, 20 or 25%, depending on whether it's your first one, the second one, right? Some people that I usually have to put 25% down because I have so many rental properties already. So sometimes when it's your first couple, you don't have to do that, but then after that you do.
Yeah, 25% is good, because we're trying to set an expectation here, what you're not thinking about. So what you should think or plan for, if you want to be conservative, and you should be with these, is 25%. The next part of the purchase that people don't normally think about is the insurance change. You get rental insurance when you have a rental. For short-term rentals, it's a little bit more expensive because you should be getting a policy specific to Airbnb short-term rentals that covers, normally when you get a rental policy, you're not covering the contents of the home, the furnishings, the insurance for all that stuff, because tenants have renter's insurance. You don't have that for short-term rentals. You want to be, they're your furnishings, they're your contents. You want, you need them to be covered. So,
and although we've never had it happen, somebody could walk right off with all that stuff, right?
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of other things like you get, we call Airbnb short-term rentals, we call them a business. You're not just an investment property, you're creating a business. You want business insurance, you generally want to have loss of income insurance, where these policies do, hurricane comes by, wipes you out, can't operate for 3 months, you get your insurance policy should cover the rental income that you should have gotten, so that a unit could stay afloat, amongst other things. And then, of course, the monthly cost. You want to consider the monthly cost of owning that home, which we talked about last week. Monthly cost of owning that home until you get it rented.
Yep.
So that's the initial cost that most people think of. So the setup, the actual setup, is what we want to talk about that people don't, I would say, underestimate.
Well, let me go back to piggyback on last week's podcast and to piggyback on what you just said. Not days on market in this case, but days vacant is costing you a certain amount of money. We talked about this at length in our last podcast. And so that's the point you made is that people also underestimate, right? They underestimate. They think that they're going to, I'm going to come in, stage this home, put some furniture in. I'll have it done in a week or two. It never is done in a week or two, is it?
No, because the vacancy can be a very big difference right here because it can take you a lot longer. I mean, we're talking about a lot of time. I mean, we do these setups and people underestimate the difference between how fast we can do it as a business versus they think they can do it on weekends.
And we underestimate it. We've done it several times and we still underestimate the amount of time it's going to take us to do it. And we got a whole team doing it.
Well, I wouldn't say we underestimate it anymore because when it comes to these things, we are very conservative.
Yep.
You know, when the goal is to be conservative because if you hit those conservative thresholds and you sometimes blow them out of the water, that's a win. You're setting yourself up for wins. When you are not conservative estimating these things, Airbnb operations and all that, you're going to feel like you're losing because you set the wrong thresholds.
What do you tell a client when they ask you how long is it going to take you to set up this Airbnb for me?
It varies. No, it varies. I mean, you got 1 bedrooms, you got 5 bedrooms.
I got a vacant 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. Just kind of normal stuff. Living room, dining room, kitchen. What are you going to tell somebody that for your team?
Let's use a real world example. We told somebody 3 weeks ago, or not 3 weeks ago. We told somebody recently 3 weeks. They opted to do it themselves. They took 3 months.
So that additional 9 weeks, if you do the math, probably cost them thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, because your would-be rental revenue is would-be short-term rental revenue.
Yeah,
it's no
which is even
monthly.
more than the long-term.
Yeah, and we'll get into there's
thousands of dollars. The front end
wasted. And sometimes it's timeline.
And our fee was nowhere near that.
Seasons matter. Seasonal decisions matter in short-term rentals. The recent one, or this has happened with a couple recently, but the one that I was talking about in 3 weeks, that end of 3 weeks would have been the peak season of summer. And well, you took 3 months, and now we started it at the end of the worst season part of the year to start a short-term rental. You know, you can't calculate those things, you know, accurately. You can estimate them, but you can know that you're leaving a lot on the table for cost out of your pocket.
You're making me shake my head, roll my eyes, all of it. That's why we do this podcast, right? Hopefully somebody listens or somebody gets something out of this and they learn something from all this because, man, we get to see people make these decisions over and over again and cost themselves money. It's so frustrating for you and I to watch sometimes.
Well, and I'd call it a big risk and a big reward because the thing with short-term rentals and Airbnbs is it's a growing market. It's more and more saturated every day. Doesn't mean it's not profitable, but it means the people who don't do it right are kicked even further behind. They're kicked even lower and lower and lower until they're not making money or whatever it may be. You know, before these markets get saturated, even the ones that don't try hard enough can make money because it's not saturated. Well, as you get any market saturated, the prime ones are going to do better and you know, the subprime are going to do worse, you know, and to a point they probably can't operate anymore. So these things matter. The most important thing you do with an Airbnb short-term rental, I believe, is setup. It's because it needs to be done right. So, because there's a big range of what you can get. So let's get into
let's get into the cost of setup and what does the setup entail? You've got a list for us, don't you?
Yeah. So what everyone does think about is furnishing the unit. Right. And I've gone to Airbnbs that have done just that. They furnished it. They put a couch in the living room. They put a TV stand and a TV in the living room. And they got 3 rooms with 3 beds. That's it.
That's it?
That's it. Drawers are empty. Kitchen's empty. Walls are empty. You know.
So let me ask you a question, a rhetorical question. Is that much different than what you find when you walk into a hotel room?
No, it's not hugely different except for the functionality part.
No, I get it. I get the difference in use and why people get a short-term rental versus a hotel room. You're going to get into that right now.
Yeah.
But I just never it just occurred to me that what you described was a hotel room.
Yeah, bland, bare, and unfunctional.
Yep.
That's why people
Bring
don't
your
want to
own
spend many
stuff.
times in there. So. But that's not what then you're the same as a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I book you?
That's all right. I might as well go to a Hilton.
I'm going to book
and
you
not
out of
worry about all the.
necessity and desperation only. Those are the people you're going to get. It's not the audience you want.
That's right.
So the next easy thing that some people think about is decor. I'd say this is the number one thing that anybody ever underestimates, because decor in a short-term rental is what makes it unique. There's a lot of other things we're going to get into that make it unique, but the design or the decor, what's on the walls, what every room looks like, the lighting, whatever it may be, is things people remember, write reviews about, and show up in pictures. That's the marketable piece.
And it's not just what it looks like, it's also the functionality of the decor sometimes, right?
Themes.
Like if you're in a bedroom where the sun comes in when you wake up in the morning, then you better have a blackout curtain on that room, and it better be functional. Otherwise, you're going to get a review that says, loved the home, hated the room that woke me up every morning at 6:30 a.m.
Well, and you're getting into probably one of the most important points, which is not just purpose, but generalization, I'd say. A lot of people we talk to, a lot of clients that do these short-term rentals, they try to set it up how they want it, or how like they would operate in it. It's not how you make a successful short-term rental. You can start there, but you also need to round out the corners and make sure that everyone's going to be happy with this. Okay, well, you may wake up at 5 a.m., but most people don't. Well, let's not even say most people. Everyone
You just
doesn't.
need to give people the ability to not have to wake up at 5 a.m.
Yeah,
Which comes back to the functional I was talking about. So that's part of the decor. When you're trying to decide what am I going to put on this window, which is only a small part of the decor that you're referring to, but it's an example of functionality. You talked about lights. We have some of our Airbnbs that have some really cool LED lights that's part of the decor. To your point, makes it more memorable, makes it more marketable, but it's also functional, right? I mean,
yeah, because it does. It goes from, that's the process, right? You set it up, but the thing that makes you successful is you're marketing something online. Usually, you're marketing this thing. You market Airbnbs by putting a purpose on it or a theme, and having that theme and purpose in the experience when they get there. And then that same experience being put in the reviews afterwards is what, that cycle of life is what continues your success or failure.
Yep.
I'd say success and failure go into that. And, a lot of that, it's easy to just say decor, but like, say we have some that are by a sports park. So we sports themed it. The marketing's all sports themed, so that the people coming in for the sports park see that it's sports themed, and that's their experience there, so they're booking the sports theme. Then they go into each room and it has a different theme. We won't get too specific, but then they leave reviews that yes, this sports themed Airbnb is sports themed, and we loved these sports themed features. And now, the next people want to do it, and that's what you call target audience. If you some units you're not looking for a target audience, but I'd say it's that specific of one. But there's always a target audience, and knowing it. Extremely important.
Knowing it, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this, Kyle, but you are really good our team is really good at creating themes for each one of the Airbnbs that we set up. And to your point, it's based on location. It's based on whatever theme is appropriate for that home. We have one in Fort Worth that's a historic home it's an old firefighter. It's like the first black firefighter in Fort Worth, right? So that's kind of it's become a memorial to this guy, kind of, but it's a historic, we themed it that way, right? Because of what it is. Sometimes you theme it because of where it is, like you said about the sports park. Sometimes we just create a theme because hey, this is a great space for a beach theme. So we kind of create that atmosphere.
And sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's very direct and very exposed all over the place, depending on the purpose. But
I think the important thing that you and your team have done when we're setting these up, though, is making a point when we start off with of deciding what that theme is going to be, so that from that point on, all the decisions we make drive toward that theme. Mm-hmm. And then some interesting stuff comes out of it, doesn't it?
It does. And one of the most common comments, because I've stayed in Airbnb, I have friends who've stayed in Airbnb, because of what we do, people talk to us about them, and me specifically about them all the time. And one of the most, I'd say, reoccurring comments is how much effort the owner put into it, or how much thought the owner put into it. Like, that's the sentence. Like, they clearly put a lot of thought into this. They clearly put a lot of intention into what they did. And it could be one tiny thing that they used while they were there, like a pool home having pool toys. I get that comment a lot because we provide pool toys. Mm-hmm. You know what they're telling me? That most people don't. Mm-hmm. That's what they're telling me. It's because they didn't think about that. How much is that a cost that you're really considering? Is if you get these
your $5 noodles?
Yeah, your $5 noodles make hundreds of reservations happy and get you hundreds of more. Mm-hmm. That's the cost of. I guess that's part of the cost of setup, but it's the cost of design and intention. It's so important.
Yeah, you're creating a resort. You're creating an experience much like a resort does in a very much smaller form. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, you don't have to. But if that's the way the successful ones are done. And look at Airbnb. Airbnb spent, as of right now, they redesigned their whole application, their whole business model around what we are talking about, having a purpose and design to their properties. Now, when you go on that app, you see they're categorized by purpose. They're categorized by amazing pools, cabin in the woods, sports themed, whatever these themes are. They're telling you. It's just like when Google changes their algorithm for sorting sorting the internet and websites. What do your marketing people do? They have to restructure your websites to match that algorithm. You do what your platform is telling you to do. That's how you be successful, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I know this all sounds like a lot. There is a lot that goes into this, but the point is purpose and intention in your setup, and the cost of it.
Let me ask you a question, just kind of I know the answer to this question, but let's say I've got a cabin in the woods.
Okay.
And I'm feeling kind of beachy today, and I'm setting this up, and I want to go get me a little wooden thing and some surfboards and paint waves up on the wall and just totally beach this place out. What do you think about that, Kyle?
I think that you're going to get a lot of people saying, whether they say it to you or not, when they're in there talking to the people that they booked it for, they're going to be like, this is really, if it's good, they're like, this is really interesting. Totally out of place and don't know why it's in a cabin in the woods nowhere near the beach. But it's interesting, I guess. But like, those are the conversations.
So sometimes you could get away with it if it's intentional, but you wouldn't do that.
No.
You wouldn't unless you wouldn't do that unless you went over the top with it and made it really intentional and interesting, maybe.
Yeah,
which is hard to do.
There's some kind of reason for it. The uniqueness part of this is important. That's why somebody's booking. If you're a cabin in the woods, there's probably 1,000 cabins in those woods. Well, why are they booking your cabin in those woods? No. Well, they saw something that made them want to go check out your cabin.
So what's the cost of these things, Kyle? We're here to talk about the cost of setting these up. What's the cost of furnishing a home, doing the decor, theming it out?
It's a lot more. So, and we're not going to talk about specific cost figures here because
because of inflation.
Yeah, because of inflation. No, well, I will say a lot of the inflation
is changing by the second.
Really hit all of these items. But we're talking about the costs that you need to consider when determining your final cost, because people don't talk about that or really know that.
Okay.
So furnishing a home and decor. I would say if we're keeping it really general, use your best estimate and double it. That's a good way to be conservative. Mm-hmm. But equipment. So you're going to have equipment like TVs and smart locks and these things that make your unit a lot more functional, because guests want an experience. They don't want a job. You're not supposed to be setting up an experience that makes them do a whole bunch of work when they get there. Well, here's the cabin right next to the airport, but you got to drive 30 minutes to come get the key, and then you can drive back, and then whatever. Like they want it to be as close to a hotel operationally as they can. And we'll get into that in another one. But one another big cost of setups is functionality. We talked about purpose and everything you're doing, right? One thing you decide at the beginning is how many people or occupants are you going to set this place up for, right? You're doing 8, you're doing 8. You're doing 12, you're doing 12. You should decide that before you buy a bunch of furniture, because
what if you have a giant house that sleeps 22, but it's in a city that will not allow you to have more than 12 occupancy?
And set it up for 12.
Good answer.
And set it up for 12.
I said that because
it may have happened. If we've already set it up for 22 people,
had that happen to us. Yeah.
Then
we learned that lesson the hard way. Huh?
Do something else. I don't know. But if you have it, let's just use 8 as an example. Or 12. Let's use your 12. Okay. So if you have it set up for 12, but you have 4 cups, it's not set up for 12. If you have it listed for 12 and you have 4 sets of sheets, it's not set up for 12.
Set up for 12.
Dishes, there's 4 plates, not set up for 12. If there's 12 plates, if there's 12 cups, it's not set up for 12. No, that's still only 1 per person. But at least it's something, But that's one of the biggest things
do we need?
I see people mess up.
How many towels do we need?
Let's say at least 12.
At least 12. How about
double
washcloths?
Those?
Washcloths. How
12,
many washcloths?
12.
How many bars of soap?
12.
How many?
That's the point. You need to be considering on everything how many, based on your maximum occupancy.
And how many days is somebody normally going to be there?
Yeah, because when 2 people show up, they're going to think it's overstocked. When 12 people show up, they're going to think it's understocked. Well, you really want your reputation to be that willy-nilly all over the place? No, you don't. So matching the desired guest count is probably the biggest thing that I see people fail in without advice. And probably one of the most important, because it comes down to a lot of things, so... Or like if you have it set up for 12, but you only have 1 full bathroom, maybe don't set it up for 12 because
good call.
If a family of 12 is all sharing bathroom. 1 full bathroom,
could be one of those like big common area bathrooms with 8 showers, and
that's the only thing they're going to remember when they leave there. You remember that time that all 12 of us had to share a bathroom? That's going to be every review. I guarantee that'll be every review. So not maximizing your occupancy past the point of an experience that can be enjoyable is another part. But entertainment is another cost of setup. You want to make sure there's something there. Entertain, board games, anything, cards. Like even if there's just cards, pool table, whatever your unit has available, but not doing too much, right? Like if you have this amazing pool home and people are booking this amazing pool home for the pool, well, then maybe don't spend a whole bunch of money on putting, something in the garage also,
right.
Unless it sleeps 16 and now you want to separate the kids from the family, right. Whatever it may be, just make sure you make every decision with a purpose.
And that goes toward what you said earlier about experience, right? Creating a great experience and just making it a little bit nicer for people, a little bit more usable, right? Just a better experience. So when people go, they walk away going, wow, that was nice. It was nice to be able to hang out, have everything there. There's a deck of cards there. I can play solitaire when I got bored, or I could play chess with my son. I could turn the TV on. I can go hang out in the pool with the family. Whatever it is, man. It's just
you thought of it.
You thought of it exactly, and there was nothing, or at least very little that wasn't there for your guest.
And sometimes, if it's something they're gonna notice isn't there, maybe tell them up front. Set an expectation, so it's not it's not something that
there is only 8 rolls of toilet paper. If you're going to use more than that, bring some more.
Yeah, but that's what you should expect, because I mean, you're the number one thing, especially if you operate these things yourself, that you will learn is you will not please everybody. I mean, life should tell you that, but short-term rentals and hospitality will definitely tell you that you will not please everybody, but your goal should be to please on a general basis.
You know what? You say that, but we've also learned a competing lesson to that. And this all goes to your point about setup, cost of setup, and everything else. The one thing that we have learned from all of our units and everything that we've done is that even though you can't please everybody, a property that's well located, done well enough, it has a well enough experience, can overcome almost all negatives if it's done well enough. And that's hard to do. We actually have a couple properties that it almost doesn't matter what happens, what negative experience people have. They walk away going, man, that was so awesome. And they forget all about whatever negative thing happened.
Yep.
But that's hard to do. Sometimes that's just location. Well,
there's going to be there's some things. Sometimes it's small things, but there will be things that'll never please everybody, because one person will say, why wouldn't you do it this other way? And then if you did do it that other way, someone else would be like, well, why didn't you do it the other way? Well, I did do that, and I've literally had that happen. I won't get into that, but
can't please everybody. I get it.
But it should make sense and be functional.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Don't want to beat a dead horse. I think those are the things. Purpose, design, functionality are the costs of setup that get neglected, I think, the most often. And that's keeping it very general. But if you walk through the process of your setup is your marketing presentation, and then we missed photography. Photography is probably the biggest one. It's at the end of setup, but people think they could spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars setting up these units, and then I'm going to go cheap on photography. I'm running.
I see people using their iPhones with dark pictures. They don't even try to make their iPhones pictures look great. And I see the worst photography, the worst. And I just shake my head and can't believe.
The one people hate hearing is algorithms, right? You're pumping something into a website, right? And you don't need to know what algorithms means. You don't need to know it. You need to know what that website wants, right? AirBNB specifically will tell you that they want professional photography.
And they can tell. Their algorithm can tell when it's got professional photography.
Go scroll through, go do any search, any city, no matter, or somewhere that has more than a handful of Airbnbs. Tell me how long you have to scroll until you see something that's not professional photography. Because if you do it in New York or something, you'll be scrolling for a while.
Go to Nashville and book last minute. Then you'll find the ones that have iPhones.
Yeah, you will, because there's a reason they're open. So,
No, I know you want to wrap this up. I get it, but I also want to kind of sum up what you were saying in the beginning with what we've talked about here. Okay. And that is, I've bought an Airbnb. I bought a home for the purpose of setting it up as an Airbnb, or I have a rental that I'm going to turn into an Airbnb, whatever. I have a home. I'm about to set it up. And I think I know what I need, and I go and I start buying all this stuff. Let's say that I have, I don't know, $40,000 to spend on a purchase and setup, right? And in my brain, I'm thinking all this through and thinking that should be plenty. I buy a $200,000 or $200,000 house. I'm going to put, I don't know, 10% down. I know I'm going to put more than that, but let's just, for my example, I'm going to put 10% down. Got $20,000. That's going to leave me another $20,000 to set it up. That seems like plenty, but that's all I got. Maybe that's my life savings, or at least that's all the savings I have that I'm willing to invest into this project, into this business, right? And now I get to the purchase and I find out I need to put more than 10% down, or I didn't think about the closing costs, and now it's 25 or 26,000. That just cut into my remaining amount that I have here. I'm just going through this scenario because this is a real scenario, isn't it, Kyle? This is the kind of thing that happens to people and they don't think about. So now, what am I down to? If I paid $26,000 out of pocket because I didn't think about closing costs, I'm down to $14,000. Totally making these numbers up, y'all. For $14,000, I now have to set up this Airbnb. Have you been able to set up very many Airbnbs for $14,000, Kyle? That were of normal size, not small ones?
Recently, no.
People get to the end, they have this tight budget, and it's like, oh crap, now it just got even tighter. And they start making decisions. And maybe they start off doing the right thing. They go on Facebook Marketplace and they find a great couch, really cheap, right? And so you start doing the right things, but all that stuff starts adding up still. And you're amazed how quickly it adds up. And you buy a set of dishes instead of the 4 sets that you need, to your point, right? And you buy all this stuff and you get to the end and you've got like $1,500 left and you still haven't put curtains up yet. And, then you start making really bad decisions like, oh crap, I need to buy the cheapest curtains I can find because I've got 8 curtains to put up. And oh no, you know what? I didn't get bed covers. I forgot the bed covers. And you know what I'm saying? Like you, especially if you've never done this before, you're always going to forget not just one thing. You're going to forget 10 things.
There's so many little things. I mean, like you said, it bed bug covers on the bed and the pillows and all that stuff. You think that doesn't add up? Just that alone is a 4-digit number in most places. So, I mean, and this isn't to scare you. This is to not drown
so you can prepare for it.
People, this is I'd say it's still a risky business because you put a lot of upfront capital. And if you don't do it right, it'll definitely return. If you don't do it right, you could dig yourself a hole that just keeps on digging.
So what would you say, Kyle, to that person I just described? Before they started, I'd say we figure out the cost of setup or the design. I have $40,000. I'm planning to put $20,000 down.
The reason I don't put figures to this is the figure doesn't matter. What do you want to set up? Do you want to set up a unique space that will draw, have a near 80% plus occupancy that'll draw everybody who looks at it? Do you want to be the top of your market? Do you want to be something that's just a cash flow generator? Those things all, everyone's going to say they want to be the top of their market. Well, I'm then going to respond and tell you what it's going to take, which is going to be a lot bigger of a figure than if you just want, like say a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment by the airport doesn't need to be. You'd be wasting your money by blowing it up with this uniqueness and all this stuff because you're targeting people that are
going to stay for 1 or 2 days.
Be there for maybe 1 or 2 hours.
And it's not about the experience.
About the experience for them. They just need a place to stay. But you need to know that. So that's how many things go into this process. So I'd say if you don't think through all of it, or at least most of it, then you shouldn't do it. Because you're putting a lot of capital up for and you can transition after you purchase, you still rent it out, and we always say that no matter how good we think Airbnb short-term rental will be, the world changes. Make sure it's something you can pivot and rent out.
I haven't found a property yet that you can't rent out on a long-term basis. No. So that's the point, is that's what we always tell people, is that if you set up an Airbnb and we guess wrong, and it's oversaturated, it doesn't work, the theme isn't right, and we need to switch that back to a furnished long-term rental, you're still going to do fine. You're still going to get 10 to 20% more than everyone else because it's furnished.
And you can refinance it and go try again somewhere else.
There you go.
But going cheap makes it
cheap. Don't go cheap.
It makes less money.
Hey, Kyle,
usually noticeable.
In the last part of this quote-unquote series that we're going to do, right, we talked about we're going to go through some numbers, right?
Yeah, so we're going to go through some actual numbers at some actual Airbnbs we have and manage, and talk about the process. We have a lot of different experiences, but the process of setting those up, the different timelines
of actual units.
Whether they're in saturated. I've made some successful in saturated markets. We've literally created markets before in places that didn't have any. So. It's a lot different, and we're
I have some that are starting to get oversaturated and are kind of dying off a little bit, huh? Like not dying off, but just leveling out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like not
Ahead of the game can help saturated markets because at the end of the day, if you're the one who's been in it for 4 years and have hundreds of reviews and they're 5 stars and all that stuff,
that's right.
There gets a point where no matter how saturated the market is, other than price changes, you're going to be getting bookings. So, and
love it.
Yep.
So we could talk more about this, the cost and the actual real numbers of the cost.
Yeah, stay tuned. We're going to talk more on future episodes of actual operating costs and that process, as well as eventually getting into the actual numbers and our actual experiences. Because at the end of the day, we can talk in generalizations like this and tell people what to think about, or we could tell you our actual experience, success and failures. I mean,
and that's our goal here, to learn, to share what you could learn from our experience.
Yep. So if you have any questions, you want to set it up, you want us to analyze a setup or think all this stuff through that we've talked about very complexly through for you so that your brain doesn't explode, give us a call, 817-818-9039. Give you a quick hint. If you want to get straight to me, press star. Or shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com. Kyle,
how did it get straight to me?
How do they get straight to you?
Yeah.
I don't remember. 7, 8, 9. No, I'm just
You gotta go all the way down the list. If you really want to talk to John, then
call him at 817-637-4658.
There you go.
Boom.
That is the best way to do
That
it.
is the best way. All right. Well, we are out. Thanks for tuning in.
We go. We are TTPM.